There's something strange about musicians. You can meet incredibly talented musicians, people with amazing technique, beautiful musical ideas, years of dedication, and still see them struggle financially. At the same time, you sometimes meet musicians who are good, sometimes just solid, who manage to build a real life with music. If talent alone determined success, this wouldn't happen. But it happens all the time. And I think many musicians notice this quietly. They look around and think, I know musicians who are better than me and they are struggling. Or sometimes the thought is even more painful. I know I'm good, but somehow nothing really moves forward. So the real question becomes, if talent isn't the only factor, what actually determines whether a musician builds a sustainable life? When I started working as a professional guitarist, I didn't start with big concerts. I didn't start with a big opportunity. What I did was something very simple. I started going to sessions, mostly blues sessions. I showed up regularly, sometimes just to listen, sometimes to sit in and play. At the beginning, nobody knew me. I was just another guitarist showing up. But something interesting happened. After a few sessions, people started to recognize me. They had seen me play. They asked me to play with them. They knew what I sounded like. They knew I could handle myself on stage. And after a few more sessions, the blues scene in that area began to know me. And eventually someone asked me to play in a band. That opportunity didn't come from sending out hundreds of emails. It came from something much simpler, showing up, again and again. There's a quote often attributed to Woody Allen. 80% of success is showing up. And in many creative fields, there's also a lot of truth in that, because the world cannot respond to music it never encounters. From what I've observed, the difference between struggling musicians and musicians who build a real life often comes down to three things: visibility, identity, and psychological readiness. Let's start with visibility. Many talented musicians are simply not visible enough. They practice a lot. They develop incredible skill, but very few people actually experience their music. And if people don't experience your music, they cannot build trust in you. And trust is one of the most important currencies in music career. People hire musicians they trust. People book musicians they have seen before. People recommend musicians they feel familiar with. And familiarity takes time. It takes repetition. It takes presence. As the philosopher Seneca once said, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. But opportunity usually appears where people can actually see you. The second factor is identity. Many musicians see themselves purely as artists, which is beautiful. But sometimes it is also becomes very limiting, because they unconsciously separate art from the practical world. They think things like, if my music is good enough, people will discover it. But in reality, building a life in music usually means something else as well. It means becoming someone who participates in the real world. Someone who builds relationships. Someone who communicates clearly. Someone who makes it easier for other people to work with them. This doesn't mean becoming commercially or fake. It simply means understanding that music lives inside a social world. The third factor is probably the deepest one. Psychological readiness. Many musicians are incredibly skilled, but internally they struggle with things like fear of visibility, fear of rejection, perfectionism, comparison, self-doubt. And these things quietly influence behavior. You might know you should reach out to venues, but something inside hesitates. You might know you should share your music more often, but every time you try, it feels uncomfortable. So instead, you go back to practicing, and practicing feels safe. But practice also alone rarely creates a career. It creates an ability, but ability still needs to meet the world. There's a beautiful observation from Timothy Galway. He wrote, "The opponent within one's head is more formidable than the one on the other side of the net." And for musicians, this is incredibly true, because sometimes the biggest obstacle is not the audience, not the industry, not other musicians, but the voice inside your own mind. The voice that says, "This isn't good enough. You're not ready. People will judge you. Why would anyone care?" And that voice can become very convincing. So, when we ask the question again, why do talented musicians struggle financially? The answer is rarely just talent. More often it's the combination of three things: visibility, identity, and psychological readiness. Talent is important, but talent becomes powerful only when it meets the world, when people hear you, when people trust you, when people know who you are. Sometimes the next step in a musician's life is not becoming better. Sometimes it's becoming more present, more visible, more connected, because the world cannot respond to music it never encounters. If you are interested in the psychological side of being a musician, consider subscribing. Here on Music and Mind, I explore the inner patterns that shape creativity, performance, and the path of a musical life. And if music sometimes feels too serious or too heavy, you might enjoy my video about bringing back play into music. Inspired by the ideas of Timothy Galway. You find it right here.